I'm RJ Cutler. I am the director, writer, and producer of Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry.
My Invisalign has.
I have taken out my Invisalign.
My Invisalign, and this is the album. This is my parents' bed, and I sleep in here because I'm scared of monsters.
Today's the day to celebrate.
We made this album in a bedroom at our house that we grew up in, so it's really like anything is possible.
I honestly don't know how any artist of any age is doing it without a parent.
Is that Million?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Step on the glass, staple your tongue. Bury a friend. I wanna end me,
Bad. Again.
end me.
Nope.
I wanna end me.
Boom.
I wanna end me. I gotta sell my soul, 'cause I can't say no, I can't say no.
Sounds pretty horrible.
I think it sounds kind of awesome.
It's pretty bad.
It is a horrible time to be a teenager. Kids are depressed.
I look into the crowd and I see every single person in there is going through something.
I could lie, say I like it like that, like it like that.
And I have the same problem.
I could lie, say I like it like that, like it like that.
I was like, why don't I turn this into art instead of just living with it?
Hey, you guys need to be okay, because y'all are the reason I'm okay, okay?
Let me let you go.
You have to have faith. You have to do your best. Live your best life. Because what else?
I could lie, say I like it like that, like it like that.
Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. Streaming exclusively on Apple TV Plus February 26th.
That is the trailer for the documentary Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, streaming exclusively on Apple TV Plus from February 26th. And this is Factual America. We're brought to you by Alamo Pictures, a London-based production company making documentaries about America for international audiences. Today, you're in for a treat. We're talking about Grammy Award-winning teenage pop sensation Billie Eilish, specifically the documentary about her that will be released on February 26th. And it is our pleasure then to welcome back legendary award-winning director R.J. Cutler to talk about Billie Eilish and his groundbreaking film. R.J., welcome back to Factual America.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on. Again, the film that we've heard and seen a trailer, Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, once again releases on February 26th, streaming exclusively on Apple TV Plus. I understand there's also a theatrical release. Is that right?
It sure is. Yeah, our partners at Neon are releasing throughout the world, and it's in IMAX theaters all over the world. I think that, they've got big plans. So
excellent.
So as COVID regulations allow, there'll be opportunities to see it in movie theaters, and also, of course, to watch it on Apple TV Plus.
All right, I had the opportunity to watch it on a laptop, but I can only imagine what this thing would be like in IMAX. And
Well, the sound is sick. The sound is sick, really. And we got to mix it on a beautiful old soundstage at Sony over the holidays. So nobody was there. The lot was empty. And there we were on the Burt Lancaster soundstage.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. And it sounds like you wouldn't believe, really. And Aaron Forbes, who's Billie's music director, oversaw the mix of her performances and is just a genius. And it was a thing of beauty.
Well, even just on my little headphones, it was amazing. Hands up. I mean, I've probably haven't knowingly necessarily listened to Billie Eilish in my life, but I was blown away by the music and the sound.
I'm so glad.
Well, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast again. You've won many awards and accolades, but just so you know, you're the first person to be a repeat guest on Factual America. So you always
well, will now be at the top of the list.
There we'll have to
of
send
accomplishments.
We'll have to make a little statuette or something and send it to you.
Thank you.
RJ, if I may, well, I'm glad you accept, and do accept my compliments, because I'm not just saying this. I think you've outdone yourself this time. What do you think? It's an incredible film.
I love this film. I do. I'm very proud of it. I feel like Billie and her family gave us the great gift of trust and giving us such unfettered access over a full year, and then in handing over the several hard drives of family archival material, and it's hard work to make a film that you like. But I worked with an incredible team of collaborators, and we're really excited to share it with the world. Very excited.
Well, maybe you can, what are people going to see when they finally get to stream this doc? Just to give them a little taster of what they're in store for.
Well, it is the story of a year in Billie Eilish's life, and it's it's her 17th year. So it happens to be the year that she writes and releases her debut album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And so you see the creation of that album, and you see what happens when it's released. But it's also the story of a young woman who is crossing the threshold between childhood and adulthood. And you see that, and it's very much a personal story. It's an emotional narrative. It's a family story. It's the story of two parents whose daughter is becoming Billie Eilish, and whose daughter is becoming Billie Eilish. And that's a beautiful thing, and also is full of a story full of drama and emotion, and then it's the story of two siblings who have created something extraordinary together, Billie and Finneas. Of course, for those who don't know, they co-write all their songs together, and they perform together, and while Billie is the front man, Finneas is the producer, and it's a remarkable collaboration. And so you see all of that, and all of this. There are lots of twists and turns, and it's a great yarn, I think, and a full meal. It's a 2-hour and 20-minute film. There's performance. It's a musical. There's an intermission. I
was going to say
it's a good way to spend. It's a good way to spend the day or the night. It's a good way to spend the night. Billie suggests you get a blanket and light a candle and snuggle up with friends and family, and that's the way she has suggested you watch it. I like the idea of folks seeing it in theaters or in front of the best TV in their house, or with the best pair of headphones if they're watching on their computers, so that they can appreciate the full beauty of the sound.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it a second time. Even I'm going to get my teenagers to sit down and watch with me. Something they don't usually do, and and I think they will certainly will enjoy it. I mean, as you alluded to, mentioned. I mean, there's so much going on here. The album, amazing concert footage, the Coachella Music Festival, even them recording the Bond theme was an amazing sort of scenes there too.
Yes, under a tight deadline.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can talk more about that too. But and as you say, we also watch her in everyday life. I mean, humble middle class bungalow that they live in. I mean, studying for a driving test. They record songs in Finneas's bedroom. I mean, that's it's so normal.
This is why I say it's really functioning on two planes. I mean, on some level, she's part deity and part human, and it's like the Superman story. She's very much struggling and dealing and confronting all of the things that a 17-year-old struggles with, deals with, and confronts. And you see those things, and also she's writing about them. and she's sharing them with her audience, and she's creating great art, and it's awesome to watch.
I mean, yes, and like you said, she's a teenager with teenage crushes, and then she gets to meet her teenage crushes in real life. So it's this two planes almost. She meets people like Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom, doesn't even realize it's Orlando Bloom. I must say I didn't at first either. Justin Bieber and others, and then there she is at home sleeping in her parents' bed because she's scared of monsters, as the trailer says and the film says, and having her brother try to trick her into recording a hit song and things like this, and the natural tensions that you get between creative forces. It is quite amazing to see. And then you've got this, amazing concert footage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of performance. My goal was kind of to create a musical, and for this to function as a musical, so that we were very deliberate in the pieces of music that we chose. The entire score is by Billie Eilish and Finneas. It is the underscoring is all taken from stems of their music. And we use that music as part of the narrative and the construct of the film. But then the songs that she sings, and there well over 20 performances in the film, are specifically chosen both for their narrative and their emotional content. And sometimes we play those performances out in full because that's what the narrative and the emotional moment in the film call for. And it's there's that whole other layer to it, in the way that with musicals there's that whole other layer. And we film the performances in a very in a way I think most viewers won't be familiar with. We kind of forego what has become the more kind of familiar swooping camera on a jib arm look that that you recognize from so much concert footage that you see. And instead we're in an intimate space and an intimate moment with Billie. And my direction to the DP was I want to feel her breathing on stage. I want the audience to connect with her emotionally in the same way that her audience is connecting with her emotionally. And I want the film experience of her performance to be unique, so that even if you've seen her in concert, seeing her perform in the style that we filmed her in would still be brand new to you. And I'm excited about what the results are.
Yeah, and I think you captured some. She does big stadiums. She also does some venues that seem pretty intimate by comparison.
Yeah, wide range, sure.
Yeah, and also, the thing that struck me was, I've been to my share of concerts way back when, and festivals and whatever, but and people know the words to the songs of their favorite artists and thing, but I don't remember seeing an audience that seemed to be hanging on every single syllable of every word like they do at her concerts. Was that that's what you capture? Was that your experience?
Yeah, Billie Eilish's connection to her audience is very deep and powerful. She speaks to it in the film, of course. She says that I don't think of them as my fans. I think of them as part of me. I think that what connects them and makes them part of each other is her art, her music, her words, her music, her performance. And people feel it very, very deeply. Of course, her audience has expanded. I think she had maybe 5 or 6 million followers on Instagram when I met her, probably fewer. And she now has, I think, 75 million. So her audience has certainly expanded with her enormous success of the last year. But that connection, I haven't seen it change. And it's look, she carries the weight of her audience's pain and of her audience's joy, even as she carries the weight of her own pain and her own joy.
Yeah.
But this is who she is. And, there's I think a shamanistic element to it. I think there's it's big stuff.
Yeah.
She's speaking to millions,
Yeah.
and they're hearing her and they're feeling her and they're connecting with her.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is, it's pretty special. It's pretty special.
It's pretty amazing to watch, I must say. We're going to go for an early break here, and then we'll be right back with you, RJ, to take that line of questioning further, because I think it's a very interesting point. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Alamo Pictures to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm with RJ Cutler, award-winning director, producer, and writer of Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. Streaming exclusively on Apple TV Plus from February 26th. Limited theatrical release with neon throughout. Well, I shouldn't say limited. It's throughout the world, actually.
If your country has movie theaters, neon's going to get it into them.
Exactly. And if you've got IMAX, even better. Even my little town here in the UK's got an IMAX theater now, so I'm looking forward to that opening up again.
Awesome.
So we've you're on here before. We discussed Belushi. It's been a busy few months for you. We talked about your mentor, D.A. Pennebaker, and he did Don't Look Back. But on that film, sort of Dylan creates this on-screen persona. But can you speak with Billie Eilish? I get the feeling what you see is what you get.
I believe so. In my experience, that is absolutely true. And, I like to point out the creation of a persona is a very challenging thing to pull off.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I don't believe Billie has any interest in artifice. She is who she is, and I think that is a big part of her great appeal.
And so, how did you get involved? How does a middle-aged man, award-winning director, get involved with a documentary about an up-and-coming? I mean, she'd kind of already arrived, but up-and-coming pop star. Pop sensation?
Well, I recognize why you refer to me as a middle-aged man, but the truth is that I identify as a teenage girl. So, and I shared that with Billie during our first meeting, and I think she appreciated that. So, I was invited to meet with her and with her family, and went to their home in Highland Park, the very home you see in the film. And sat with them in their backyard and had just a very a conversation not unlike this one, in which we talked about process and how I approached filmmaking, which is very organic, very easy. We don't really do anything, to be honest. We really just we our goal is to see things as clearly as possible, and to we only want to film what would be happening whether we were there to film it or not. And we aim to impact our environment as minimally as possible. And as I explained to people, I'm not looking to be a fly on the wall. I'm too big for that. I'm simply looking to for you to be hopefully as comfortable with me and my crew as you are with anybody with whom you're fully comfortable being yourself. And that's our goal and our approach. And we don't want to film anybody who doesn't want to be filmed, or in circumstances where people are uncomfortable. And sure enough, it turns out to be a very successful organic process, that natural, that's easy for people. And it was a great meeting, and I asked her what she thought. What would a film like her be like? And I had no idea. I'm not. I had no idea what to expect her response to be. And she said she thought it should be like The Office. The TV series,
Yeah.
the UK TV series that, of course, had so much success in the States and
Right.
in its adapted form, and she's a huge fan of it, and
Interesting.
and it took me a minute to realize what she was referring to, and what I believed that she was referring to is that there are characters, particularly the John Krasinski character in the US version of The Office, who have a unique relationship to the camera. Occasionally they will glance to the camera and they will connect to the audience through the camera. And as you know, having seen the film, there are a couple of moments, only a couple, but they are key moments where Billie has that relationship to the camera, in which she looks at you, the audience member, looking at her as if to say, I see you, I know you are there, I see you watching me, seeing me, connecting to me, hello. And I was excited, and I think so was she, that we were able to include a few of those moments, very subtle at key times in the storytelling in the film.
And, so you had, it must have been challenging, because as we find out, she's more than just an aspiring director herself, isn't she? She doesn't...
she's a great director.
Is she?
She's a great director. Yeah, she's got full vision, man. Like you see it in the film. One of the very first scenes, she's conceiving of the music video for When the Party's Over, and her detail, the specificity, where the table leg is, how wide, where she wants the camera, how she wants the camera to move, how she doesn't want the camera to move. Don't zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be like those cheesy directors that are always zooming in.
She's she is very specific, and she's great at it. And there are those who believe that she'll eventually, her career will be as much about directing as it is about creating music. I will tell you, what she didn't have any interest in was directing a documentary. And when we met, we agreed that I would have final cut. It's a really important part of my process. It unburdens the subject, and it credentializes the film as authentic. It's here I am. When I have final cut, I get to come on your show and say I have final cut, and that's the end of it. And so there isn't a question of if there's whatever. It's a filmmaker. It's not only the final cut of the film that I am in control of. This is the director's cut of the film. This is exactly the way I want the film to be. So, and perhaps given that, or perhaps given that, documentary isn't really, I know she loved the Justin Bieber documentaries, but it's not like it wasn't part of the discussion. What will this film be? How will, after we had that first meeting, we agreed on approach. I think we agreed without saying it out loud that we enjoyed each other's company, and we thought it would be fun to spend a year together and make some art in the way that we had agreed on the approach. We would make some art together, and I knew she'd want to come to the mix and listen to her performances because she said so that first time we met, and sure enough, she did, and it was great. It couldn't have been more gratifying. Of course, she, and I want to say, of course, but the good news is she loved what she heard. But for all of her enormous directing talent, as I say, she demonstrated pretty much zero interest in directing this film.
Okay, and restraint. So you had full access. You basically live with them for a year, I think you've said, and you go on the road with them around the world. Did you have any idea what you were gonna? When you do this, it's not just specific to this film, but when you start getting those cameras rolling, do you know what you're going to capture?
No, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of what we get to do. Here's what we know we're going to capture: life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we don't know, because no one knows, is what life is going to bring you. You don't know, and what the story I always tell is Did we talk about, forgive me if we spoke about this before, but the great Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player. Do you know Wayne Gretzky? Wayne Gretzky was one of the greatest athletes who ever lived. And
I'm aware of him, but our listeners,
your
just
audiences might not be, but he was the greatest hockey player to ever live and one of the greatest athletes to ever live. And he ice hockey, people skate around hitting a puck with their hockey stick. Yeah. Okay. And Gretzky never gave interviews. And one day he deigned to give an interview. He was at the height of his powers. And the interviewer said, "Tell us, great one, how is it, how do you do what you do? What is your secret? Tell us. And Gretzky said, "Well, it's quite simple. I just follow the puck." And we were all like, "Oh my God, he just follows the puck. Everybody else is trying to get the puck to do what they wanted to do. Gretzky just follows the puck." Well, that's our challenge. We have to follow the puck. We may want the story to go a certain way, but it doesn't matter what we want. And so we don't. We choose not to want. We choose simply to see as clearly as we can. And then then wonder what we'll see next.
And then what you get to see, one of the many things we get to see, as you say, we get to see life, is you didn't know she was going to go on and to earn 5 Grammys. And, as
5
you
Grammys.
say,
I didn't know that her album was going to be the number one album. We didn't know that her songs were going to be number one songs. We didn't know, there was a sense that this would be big, but I don't think anyone dared that on Grammy night, the hope was that she would win Best New Artist. And it wasn't a shoo-in. There were some great new artists. Lizzo. Lizzo had had an amazing year, and not just the two of them. It was a highly competitive field for all of the awards, but this was Billie's year.
What surprised you most as part of that year following her around?
I think the thing that I had to catch up with was that I'm not sure I've ever made a film about a subject whose life is changing so much every day.
Yeah.
Every day, every week, every month was an astounding transformation. Hey, listen, being 17, turning, starting at 16, becoming 18, there's a lot of change. But add that to being Billie Eilish before the album came out to Billie Eilish on Grammy night, there's so much transformation. And that means for those around her, there's so much transformation for her family, for Finneas, for her parents, for her friends, for her team, just a constant transformation. So we had to catch that. We had to realize, oh, I see. Everything's changing. It's changing again. And that was an important part of the process, kind of, as I say, catching up to that fact.
Yeah, and as you've already said, I mean, these, and as we know, great documentaries are about so many things, and you've already mentioned a lot of the right at the beginning, from the get-go, the big themes that are captured here and observed in the film. We certainly see the creative process at work. Being a teenager in the 2020s, the music industry, social media, as we've alluded to. Let's look at this. I think you do a very good job of documenting the, for lack of better way of putting it, the angst of the artist. She is a teenage girl, but she has creative differences with Finneas at times. She hates her voice. She doesn't like what she's, the typical, what you might say is typical teenager, but it is interesting to see because she is Billie Eilish.
It's funny. I thought you were going to say what you might see as a typical artist, but it's both, of course.
Yeah.
It's both. Yeah. She's demanding, she's exacting, she displeases herself.
Yeah.
Right. Did we just describe the teenager or the artist?
Yeah, exactly.
She's a perfectionist. And what we learn is that it has to be meaningful to her. It has to be meaningful to her. Well, that's rigor. That's artistic rigor from a 16-year-old. There's a scene in the movie where Bill, as you know, where Billy is 16 years old, and the question arises about making a hit song that's accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And Billy's like, what do those words mean?
Yeah.
I do not understand what those words mean.
Mm.
She knows what a hit song is, but they're
Yeah.
talking about the word accessible.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Like, what? Why would I write a song that's accessible to everyone? I have to write a song that's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And then, and she's honest about not loving it, you know, because it's hard. You know, you can tell we're talking. This is our second conversation. I love making documentary films. I love it. But I can't tell you the number of times during the making of a documentary film that I can't stand its guts. I hate it. And I never want to do it again. That's what this is. That's what this is. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. That's how you get to the point where you love it, is by suffering through the point where you hate it. And that's, you know, and you get to see that with Billy. You can't, it's, you know, you say we capture it. It's there. It's you know, it's what happens.
Yeah, her mother even says, "Well, your next album, you're not going to write any of the songs." She goes, "I'm not. There's not going to be another album." You know, I mean, it's like, you must think that.
I think that's a very. I mean, we end the scene on that because it's such a kind of resonant. Anybody who's ever created knows what that feels like. You know, it's like no mas,
Exactly.
You know,
and all these pressures on the shoulders of a teenage girl, of a child. Yes, yeah, yes, I completely agree.
All these pressures on her shoulders, all these careers, all these lives, all these livelihoods, all their families, all these fans who depend on her, all these people present on her social media feed. Who wakes up every morning and 70 million people are on her phone. 70 million people are on her phone, wanting to know what she has to say, talking about her, thinking about her, judging her, criticizing her. That's a lot. Her work, her art, creating art in the midst of that, feeling fully and communicating that, performing, dealing with a body that, you know, isn't made to perform at that level without the highest possible training, going through the emotions of being a teenager, hormonal changes, love, heartbreak, being a family member, learning to be out on your own, figuring out how to make breakfast. Jesus, that's a lot. That's a lot. And you see her do it.
Yeah. I mean, I exactly. And I think, so, you know, this thing, there's a documentary on Robin Williams called Robin's Wish. We had the director on a while back, and he said the thing you have to remember with someone like Robin is, you know, people like that, they have a whole industry around them. There are like 50 to 100 people that just make their livings off of them. And, you know, and that was a lot of pressure on him, who was already in his 60s. I mean, you see a 16, 17-year-old child. I mean, you document it well. There's this like a photo op scene in New York, and she's frustrated, and it's like everyone wants a piece of her in terms of photos, and just to be able to say they've been stood next to her. And it's this kind of, you know, another scene you document very well is that they're in her brother's bedroom, and you've got all these sort of, and I'm sorry to keep using the term middle age. I'm obviously going through a crisis, but I think, you know, these middle-aged record executives standing in the brother's bedroom talking about the album and how it's got to come out.
Yeah, that's a great scene, but that's her team. I need to, so that well, it is. It's her team of from the label, and it's her managers, and it's her. They are there are a few record executives in there, and her label. is part of Interscope, but there's the head of her label, Darkroom, Justin Lubliner, and I want to say officially and on the record and for all the world to see that I did not describe them as middle-aged. I don't believe they are middle-aged. I believe they are eternally youthful, and I believe that Justin is barely out of his 20s. So I want to make that very, very clear. But yeah, it's, you know, the thing about her team, and this isn't. I'll tell you a story. First night we were filming. Very first night we were filming. We wrapped, and the crew and I were having a beer in the bar at the hotel, and in came a guy who we recognized from the shoot. It was Billy's guitar tech, whose name is Trevor. And we were, Trevor, it's good to see you. Come and have a beer with us. And he sat with us. And as the conversation developed, I said to him, what is the secret here? Like, what's going on? What is the key? And he said, I think the key is two things. One is, you'll bleep me if I can't say this, but I'm going to quote him. One is, they don't give a fuck. Speaking of Billy and Finneas, one is they don't give a fuck, and the other is they're always right. And they have surrounded themselves with adults who recognize those two things. So they listen to them and they support them and they make their decisions, particularly Billy's decisions, come to pass. And that's what she has surrounded herself with grown-ups, adults, not grown-ups, adults who recognize that, but also adults who are comfortable being in a position where they support Billy's vision. Every one of them will tell you this. Billy's the boss. It's not a question, and it's not a conflict, and it's no one knows her audience better than she does. No one knows her work better than she does. Nobody knows how to present her better than she does. Nobody knows her image. Nobody knows social media better than she does. So these guys, men and women, really support her vision and her vision of how to execute her vision. And that's a big part of the puzzle of who is Billie Eilish.
Well, I think that's a very important point, and it's actually one that I think even her mother kind of talks about this as well. But I mean, what struck me is there's this fine line, especially when you're dealing with a child, between encouraging and almost abusing, isn't there? I mean, but she puts all this pressure on herself as well. So what do you do? I mean, there's that scene where she severely twists an ankle, but the show must go on, and at the same time, kind of, there's this, those around her, and, encouraging her and helping her achieve her ultimate, her best, which is important to have in life, to have our mentors and whatever. And then at the same time, this pressure as we've already mentioned, that she must put on herself, knowing that all these people are working with her and she's got, and her fan base and her desire to please them.
Yeah, well, I'm going to respectfully disagree just with the use of some of that terminology. She's aiming to achieve greatness. I mean, she's like an Olympic athlete. Yeah. I don't think we would question the burden on the Olympic athlete or the collegiate athlete or anybody who is aiming to achieve greatness at an early age. She's not 7. Yeah. She's incredibly well supported, I think. Again, in my experience, I don't want to, but the fact that you and I disagree, what you see in the film is the thin line you describe. I bet it's there because you're describing seeing it in the film. It's just not necessarily my experience.
Okay, and I was probably being a little bit ineloquent, as I want to do, because I think because the thought that actually came to me is, I thought when I was having some of these thoughts is an Olympic gymnast. I mean, and she is, who are actually usually a lot younger.
Well, they're not only a lot younger, but they're also, she's the coach.
Yeah.
Which is what you see in the film. And it's the point I'm making in this conversation is that she's leading this charge. If she, Maggie has said to me a number of times, and Patrick's alluded to this, they kind of have designed their parenting of Billy's success around the idea that if she ever wanted to stop, their response would be, let's stop. And that she does, that they're careful, they're thoughtful, they're frugal, and they want to impart that perspective on her. Of course, they recognize she'll make her own decisions in life, and they are as you see, very supportive of that. But that's their thought, that it's if she wants to stop, if it ever stops being satisfying, gratifying, something she wants to do, if she wants to take a year off and that year becomes 2 or 3, so be it. That's up to her.
And I think what's also, this film's timely for, only in particular, it's by, I think, pure coincidence. We've obviously had the media storm that is framing Britney Spears of the last week or two, and I think this is quite a. I haven't seen the film, but I mean, it's quite a contrast in terms of what I understand of that situation and what we see with Billie's parents, isn't it?
I mean, you'll forgive me. I've seen portions of that film. I'm very empathetic to what I understand. It reveals about how poorly treated Britney was and has been, but I don't have any expertise either on her situation or even on the contents of that film. So though I've seen moments and I feel for her and I'm a fan.
But I don't want to go before we actually talk about another element of this, which is, I think, how she speaks to her generation. I mean, technically I'm an old Gen Xer, but the world doesn't seem, it's not very easy for Gen Z, as you mentioned in the film. And yet there's all these pressures. Yet I think they are going to have to save the world, probably. Yet a film that I think, this is a film that I wouldn't be surprised if Gen Z is going to watch this film for many years and go back to it over, as they mature and do hopefully save the world. But there's teenage angst, but there's something more here, isn't there? I mean, I would hate to go through my teenage years again, and I don't think anyone else would either. But except you are the teenage girl. I forgot you were saying. But what do you think? If you think you've captured that with Gen Z, I mean, those scenes from the crowds are just incredible.
Here's what I want to say. I think there's so much about Billie and her story that is both specific to her moment and to who she is and who her fans are and what her work is, and universal. There's so much of what she's going through as a teenager that I recognize as a teenager. I think you recognize. I think future generations will, and past generations will. There's so much to her art that transcends the specificity of the art and the moment and becomes universal. And I think that's why we're seeing such a broad appeal. So, and I think, yes, her generation is burdened and is being called on to save the world. But a lot of generations have been burdened and called on to save the world, and the next generation will as well. So I think there is a specific story here, and there is a universal story here, and it's part of why it was so deeply gratifying to have the privilege to tell the story, because of those two things.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, I certainly didn't want to make it sound like you needed to be a Gen Zer to appreciate this film. I thoroughly have enjoyed it, and to be honest, I'm going to watch it again tonight before the screener expires, and then recommend others do as well, because I think it's just so well made, and I think it captures so many things, and it captures a moment, but yet it's got these universal themes. I think it's what I hope, well, certainly what I love, and I know probably you love about documentary filmmaking. I mean, what do you want viewers to take away from this film?
My only ambition is to have made an awesome film. So I hope that they experience this film in whatever way to them is awesome.
Yeah.
And that they, I think that my own personal experience has indeed been that different viewings are completely different experiences, and there is it is a full meal, this movie. It's got many aspects to it, and so I just hope folks have a good time and have the opportunity to connect to Billie and her music and her art. I want nothing more than that.
And enjoy some amazing music, which I was not very familiar with beforehand, but it's incredible. You've got, I mean, one thing I want to say is one thing I love about this film is I think this is one of those where, each time you watch, there's so many great quotes. I started writing them down and I just started losing track. But I like this one that Finneas says kind of early on, where he says, people who don't write songs are always reminded of songs from other songs. Do you think that's true about film as well? Because I'm reminded of some other films, but you would probably say, no, this one, that's typical of someone who doesn't make films. What do you think of that?
I think music's a funny thing because people turn on the radio in their car, so they think they know how to write a song. We used to.
Yeah.
I've said in the past that, like, when you're getting notes, you're gonna always get notes on the music and the clothes, because everybody has a radio in their car and everybody gets dressed in the morning. I think that filmmaking may be liberated a little bit, but people look. I love that people are opinionated about movies. That's my favorite thing. I come from the theater, and to us, we long for the days when Alfred Jarret premiered Ubu Wa, and they screamed in the streets, and they shook their fists, and they stormed his apartment, and tore down the door. Like, I want art should inspire outrage and battles, and whether that art is film or songwriting or theater, that's what we want. That's what we want from our culture. We want strong opinions and not opinions of what is allowed and not allowed, but of what the art is saying about the world and about the human condition, and that's I love that stuff.
Well, and if you don't mind me saying, I mean, the film I kept, and the reason I was kind of alluding to my own myself, I mean, the film I kept thinking of was Don't Look Back, and I know they're very different films in a lot of ways, but I think in terms of, I don't know, personally, a film that will stand the test of time, and it demands more. It's a meal, but it's a meal worth having more than once. I'm I would argue. So,
great.
So thanks again. What's next for you? I mean, you've been a busy man. You deserve a rest, but do you have anything?
I don't no resting. Life has many adventures. I have a new company called This Machine, and we have a lot of projects that are coming up. Some that we're announcing any moment. I'm hard at work on the second season of Dear, which is the series we do for Apple TV Plus, and we have some wonderful subjects that we're focused on this year. And I have a new movie that I'm going to start directing, but we haven't yet announced, and a TV series. So I'm busy, but I love it. My family is growing. We're expecting our third child in May, and
congratulations.
And I'll knock on things. We're very excited about that. Our kids are excited to have a baby sister. So we count our blessings. We count our blessings, and we hope for healing in our country, which just went through a really, really, really rough 4 years. And we as I say, we count our blessings, and we cheer on democracy. So that's what's happening around here these days.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We've got to wrap. Our time's up, as your assistant is now, if she was visible, would be waving her hands telling me to wrap up now. So thank you, RJ Cutler, director, producer, and writer of Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, streaming exclusively on Apple TV Plus from February 26th.
We'll see you for the third one next time.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been very
Thank
much
you.
appreciated. Good luck with everything. And thank you, Francesca. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Sarah.
you. So I'd like to give a shout out to This is Distorted Studios in Leeds, England, and Freddie Besbrode, our engineer. A shout out to our podcast manager, Nevena Paunovic, who keeps bringing us great guests like RJ. And please remember to like us and share us with your friends and family, wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off. You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.